you know that?
This one performance in 1939 changed forever the career of James Stewart. His 20th picture, Frank Capra's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Well, I'm not licked. And I'm going to stay right here and fight for this lost cause. Even if this room gets filled with lies like these. And the Taylors and all their armies come marching into this place. Somebody will listen to me.
2 months later, his first Western was released, Destry Rides Again, with Marlene Dietrich. In 1 year, James Stewart had incarnated both the ideal innocent Easterner and the ideal innocent Westerner. Though his billing was James, people were already calling him Jimmy. My parents were European immigrants, and even they always called him Jimmy. Stewart embodied a kind of universal innocence, which director Ernst Lubitsch saw when he cast him as an ideal innocent Hungarian in his film The Shop Around the Corner. And it worked.
Just what do you mean, what you think of me personally?
Oh, well, I mean, since you ask, no matter what anybody else says against you, I think you're a gentleman.
Well, I try to be.
Because no matter what the role, as director George Stevens told me once, Jimmy Stewart just walked in and extinguished disbelief. Maybe that's because the roles he played were a lot like his own character, or maybe because he is simply the finest American actor of the talking era. He didn't win the Oscar for Mr. Smith, but rather for a less ambitious performance the year after in The Philadelphia Story. People said the Academy was making up for its oversight. Cary Grant told me once that Stewart's way of stammering, dropping words, interrupting sentences had influenced everyone at this time. He said that Jimmy had the same effect on pictures that Marlon Brando had some years later. When the U.S. entered World War II, Stewart, who'd had over 400 hours of civilian flying time, joined the Air Force, went from second lieutenant to colonel, commanded 20 bombing missions over Germany, was awarded the Air Force Medal, the Croix de Guerre, the Distinguished Flying Cross with Oak Leaf Cluster. But the real-life hero returned to find that his fictional heroes were no longer popular. His first post-war picture, Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life, failed at the box office, though it remains his personal favorite among his pictures. He had returned to find a public impatient with the innocent idealism he personified before the war, and as he told me, he decided to toughen it up. Still, he didn't hit his stride until his 9th post-war film and his first post-war Western, Winchester 73, directed by Anthony Mann.
That's Dutch Henry Brown. I thought you said you didn't know him.
I said I didn't recall the name.
It was the start of Jimmy Stewart's most popular decade, the 50s, also the period of his finest and most daring work, divided between the series of Westerns, mostly directed by Anthony Mann, and the far more sophisticated and neurotic Easterners of films like two of Hitchcock's best, Rear Window with Grace Kelly.
We have all night.
We have all what?
Night. I'm going to stay with you.
And the much darker Vertigo with Kim Novak.
I loved you so, man.
Among his most impressive and significant performances, one that sums up both the idealism and the worldliness of Stewart's character is featured in Otto Preminger's finest picture, Anatomy of a Murder, with a great score by Duke Ellington and a superb cast. This picture could have been made yesterday.
This is a cross-examination murder case. It's not a high school debate. What are you and Dancer trying to do, railroad this soldier into the clink?
And in the last great film of Hollywood's golden age, John Ford's The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, we see Jimmy Stewart starring again as the idealistic Easterner, this time going up against John Wayne.
As I am.
Jimmy Stewart himself gave me as good a definition of the movies as I've ever heard. After you learn, he said, and if you're good and God helps you, and you're lucky enough to have a personality that comes across, then what you're doing is you're giving people little, tiny pieces of time that they never forget.